Hello, this is Raziel Cohen with ndftraining.com, and today we're going to be talking about single hand manipulation. Single hand manipulation is what we've done drills like this in the past where we're using one hand to reload or things like that. But this is talking about a malfunction. If you have a malfunction with the gun, what are you able to do about it? This is kind of where a lot of the debate comes from of carrying in condition one, which means you're carrying with a bullet in the chamber versus not carrying with a bullet in the chamber. If you get into a situation where you're at bad breath distance, you're really close to someone and you have to draw your gun, would you rather have a bullet in the chamber ready to go, or would you rather have the need to still chamber around? Now, again, it's up to you. I don't really care what you end up doing, but these are all things that are important to take into consideration when you end up deciding how you want to carry a gun. So what this drill is going to be able to do is talking about dealing with one hand and having a malfunction, or if you are someone who doesn't like carrying with a round in the chamber, then this will be able to get you to understand how you would need to get around to the chamber, and then you could determine its effectiveness and if it's something that you want to deal with. So during classes, when we're telling people to tap and rack using a single hand, we'll usually tell them to use the front of the belt and to rack it away from them, forward away from them, primarily because since there's other people next to them, we don't want to have a risk of someone else getting accidentally shot. So at the range, it's okay to train like this, but at home, there are other methods that you could use to be able to use this effectively. One thing you want to take into account is we've noticed that students who've come here with a Smith & Wesson Shield or guns like that, they don't really have a hook of where the sights are able to be grabbed to be able to do that rack. So you usually have to put a lot of pressure onto the gun to be able to rack it to get the gun into action of where you want it to be. So you also have to make sure that whatever sights you end up using are going to be able to be effective to the need that you have. As well as also if you're a student who came with plastic sights, meaning the original sights that come from Glock, those are very prone to break because since they're plastic and we're using them in very high stress, that's able to happen as well. So these are all things that you could be able to take into account. Now the idea is if you want to make sure you're doing a tap rack, which means we're making sure the magazine is seated and we're going to rack the gun to make sure that the bullet is not the problem, there's a few different ways you could do it. So you could always just whack it against your knee and really make sure that the magazine is seated, and then you could take the gun, invert it, push it against your belt line, and then rack it aggressively to make sure that round came out, and the round did come out. The other way you could do it, and I've done in the past, is if we were doing a low light class, so my hand is over here, so I'm using my handheld light. I don't really have the same accessibility because it might be too awkward for me. So what I've ended up doing is the same concept, I use the back of my belt. So I pull what's called my back out a little bit, and then rack it against the back of my belt, and the same thing will occur where the round will eject from the gun. So this has been single-hand manipulation of the gun. Again, a thing to take into account is if you're a person who wants to carry without a round in the chamber, although I usually discourage it, it's something that you have to understand could be a potential problem. If you get into a grappling situation, so you're on the floor running around trying to wrestle someone and you still need to get your gun out and you still need to rack it before it's able to be effective, again, it's up to you, but it's something to take into account that you might need to consider if you're going to be a self-defense carrier. Now, if you're going to do this just for a basic manipulation, meaning if you're talking about just bad ammunition or the gun wasn't racked properly initially, then this is also a very basic drill to understand how you're able to do it. Going back to what we said in the beginning of the video, you want to make sure that if you're someone who has the original Glock sights, which are plastic, that you probably would want to get them replaced. And if you're someone who has kind of a Smith & Wesson Shield or that kind of variant of gun, which their sights might be smooth, it might be good also to look into a different option that might have more of a hook so you could actually rack it against your belt properly. So these are all things you might want to take into account before you start carrying either without a round in the chamber, or to practice if you're someone who might be in a situation where you might end up only being able to have one hand available to you. This is Raziel Cohen with ndftraining.com. Thank you for watching.